After America is made on the lands of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nations. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded.
We are in a battle for the soul of America.
This is a fraud on the American public.
Hi, I'm Angus Blackman, and this is After America. This week, I'm joined by a friend of the show, Allan Behm. He's a former diplomat, senior political advisor, and now special advisor in international and security affairs at the Australia Institute. We spoke about negotiations to end the US and Israel's war in Iran, the political turmoil in the UK, and how Europeans might be feeling about Trump's America. We recorded on Friday the 26th of June, just after an Iranian drone struck a Singaporean-flagged cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz, and just before the US carried out 90 minutes of airstrikes on Iran. Those negotiations are clearly going super well. But before we get into it, the Australia Institute's end of financial year appeal ends on June 30. If you want to support After America and the research powerful interests fear, you can make a tax-deductible donation now via the link in the show notes. Here's Allan. Allan, Emma is in Europe doing some very important work, so the boys are back in charge again. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Angus. I'm not sure that the boys are back in charge. I think it's more a question of when the cat's away.
Your words, not mine. I'm not getting
the
involved.
mice will play.
Yeah, mice is probably right. I think Emma would like that.
I think so.
You've been away too, which we might get to in just a little bit. But this is the first time you've been on the show since the peace deal was signed between Iran and the United States. And I'm putting both peace and deal in large inverted commas.
Yes.
So let's start with it. It's literally just an MOU at this point. And Trump has said repeatedly since the Obama administration signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the JCPOA, with Iran in 2015 that he could get a better deal. Has he?
No. This is not really a deal. I mean, you've set that up in the preliminary to the question, I think, Angus. It's not even really a memorandum of understanding. It's a document, and it's got a number of very curious things in it, I think. Some of them refer forward to the establishment of things that look awfully like treaty arrangements. Some of them look forward to endorsement by the UN, which is a pretty hard target to hit. And some of them look more like wishful thinking, but I don't know whose wishes they are. It's hard to steer through which are the bits that might advantage America, which are the bits that might advantage Iran, saving only, of course, the money clauses. And then underpinning all that, you've got this sort of constant resort to threat, which the President of the United States turns to the moment there's any kind of hiatus. And the threat is always, well, if you don't quickly come to the table here, I'll come and bomb you again. And that's hardly an inducement to good negotiation. No. And it is certainly not indicative of negotiating in good faith, whatever that is. So all in all, we've got a document which amounts to very, very little, except a kind of vague indication of intention sometime further down the track.
And I mean, even that isn't working particularly well, it wouldn't seem. So just days after the deal was struck, Iran threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz again after Israel and Hezbollah traded fire. The Israeli government has said it'll stay in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza, quote, as long as is required. And just today, as we record, a vessel was struck in the Strait. It doesn't even seem like the little that is in it is working.
No. And it won't work until all parties are serious about coming to the table. Certainly, there's not much indication that the US is really serious about coming to the table. And the reason I say that, Angus, is that the US doesn't even know why it's there. It doesn't know why it went to war against Iran.
We saw that the objectives changed every other hour, right? When they first went in.
Exactly. It has no idea why it's there, and it has no idea the terms on which it won't be there. So it's totally confused.
Yeah.
Israel certainly does know why the Americans are there, because it wanted them there.
Yeah.
It wanted America to launch an attack on Iran so that it could prosecute its particular wishes in Lebanon. That makes sense, although, of course, it is illegal, but it makes a kind of strategic sense. Iran doesn't really know why it's there either. It's there defensively. It knows that it has to protect itself. And it's there opportunistically, in my view, because one of the things that the Iranian government is very good at is working out where it can make advantage out of everybody else's errors, even at cost to itself. It's a pretty disciplined regime. And I think very often from a military perspective, a strategic perspective, underestimated. It's pretty hard-headed, and it's got enormous capacity for endurance.
Yeah.
But it doesn't know why it's there. It doesn't know what it really wants to get out of it, except to be able to sell some more oil, keep the Strait open, and get back to having some kind of economic performance. So all in all, you've got three parties who have no real idea of why they are there, and at the same time, whose objectives, such as they are, don't meet. So it's an impossible situation to negotiate.
I mean, we've talked about this on the show before, but Trump ran for office on this idea that he's not going to get involved in forever wars, particularly in the Middle East. But that description you just gave of the US not having an exit strategy or an end game, or even, a beginning, an opening in this instance, but sounds really reminiscent of what went on in Iraq under Bush Jr., right? Like they went in and then got stuck because they had no idea. They said they wanted to establish democracy and whatnot, but they tied themselves in knots because they didn't know what to do.
Well, that's true. And I think that's been characteristic of what has passed for American strategy for, certainly for the last 50 years, certainly since the end of the Vietnam War, that too often the United States mistakes its ability to use military power for the results that military power might generate, so that the use of military power becomes its own end. And we see that all the time. There are complex reasons for that, I think, the main one being that the president is actually the commander-in-chief, so that you have people who are not skilled in the arts of war. They're not skilled in the exercise of military power in pursuit of national objectives. They're skilled only in the more narrow world of political thrusting.
Yeah.
And they're good at that, but political thrusting is not how you conduct war. And where we have seen civilian leaders attempt to run wars, and we've got to remember, and particularly Australians, that it was a civilian leader who got us into the big hole that created Anzac Day. That was Winston Churchill who got Australians into Turkey on an absolutely hopeless mission, made more hopeless, I might say, by a local command at the time, but it was nonetheless a pretty hopeless mission. And so when that happens and military commanders who are generally pretty prudent don't get to run it, then you have what Bush perpetrated in Baghdad and what Trump has now continued to perpetrate in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. But I mean, they're all just so convinced that they can do that. That's the like hubris that goes on. And I mean, this is not limited to this US administration, but it is, maybe uniquely prominent, I suppose.
Yeah. Look, our friend Nick Bryant, in his excellent studies, he's got two of them, as you know, but in his Forever War, he paints a picture of the United States, which has become obsessed with its own exceptionalism and its own manifest destiny. It's as though the United States, under the sorts of presidents that it's had more recently, and I'd have to say particularly Republican presidents, assume to themselves an infallibility in the exercise of power which is simply not demonstrated by the historical record.
No.
And much greater prudence and a much sharper understanding that military power is only a means to a much larger political end.
Yeah.
When if you don't understand that, then it seems you're pretty well doomed to fail, because the means don't generate. Military power doesn't generate a political outcome. It only generates a force outcome.
Speaking of doomed to fail, Vice President J.D. Vance, he is leading negotiations with Iran and seems to have been sent out to sell a US victory when it's pretty clear that there isn't one.
It's always a delicate coordination dance and the diplomatic protocols. I got to be honest with you, I don't really understand these things. I've never been particularly into diplomatic protocols.
So look, yesterday was a very, very good day. We made a lot of good progress. We did exactly what we wanted to do. What we told the Iranians yesterday is when you guys engage in what us millennials might call trash talk, you can't expect the President of the United States not to respond and not to correct the record. So yes, there was a little bit of threatening, there was a little bit of whining, but at the end of the day, the talks continued and we made great progress.
What are these negotiations seeking to achieve?
Good question. I mean, if I knew the answer to that, I would answer it. But I think, Angus, they don't know what they're seeking to achieve because, as we said earlier, they don't know why they're there and they don't know what an end state. I don't particularly like that expression because in these matters, there's never an end.
Yeah.
There's a continuation. So they don't know what that looks like. They don't know how to negotiate it. They've never negotiated on these sorts of things before. The people whom Trump has appointed to conduct the negotiations are real estate moguls. They know about building construction a bit, but they don't know how to deal with the chaotic complexities of human choices as they manifest themselves in international affairs.
Yeah.
And if there's one country that is really good at generating complexity, that's Iran. And the Americans are lovely people, but very often when they're in the more narrow fields of finance or real estate or whatever else, they're pretty simple people, actually, because they're living in a boundaried world. Yeah, their worlds operate because it avoids chaos. Or if it does have a bit of chaos, they file for bankruptcy and start again.
See a certain US president.
But you can't do that in international politics. You can't do it in international relationships. And you certainly can't stop and then start again in war. And I think that it is a bit of the nature of the US presidency to fail to understand the complexity of the tasks they're seeking to solve using military means.
Yeah. I mean, you say it's characteristic of the presidency, the office of the presidency, but it's also characteristic of Donald Trump's path to the presidency, right? Like he has got through all sorts of things in his life consequence-free financially, with his business dealings and seems to have hit a wall here because he can't do that, as you say. I'm struck too that there was J.D. Vance, as well as being vice president while he's holding the office, found time to write a book.
Yes, it's a book called Communion. And he's written a couple of other books, as you know. The Hillbilly Elegy, which he wrote, 2016, I think.
Yeah.
That is actually quite an interesting book because it's full of anger and grievance about sort of living in the Appalachians and having to struggle for an education and then finally making it to Yale and getting a good law degree. I mean, the guy is smart. Let's make no mistake about it. He's an intelligent, smart hombre, and he gets away with a lot because he is so smart.
Yeah.
So Hillbilly Elegy is one take on how you can be an angry young man and then find yourself as the running partner to an angry old man. and there's a bit of a triumph in that. I mean, I think you've got to be pretty clever to achieve that. Communion, now I have not read it, Angus. I've started to read it and I've given up already. And I'm not going to read it. I've read a couple of reviews of it just in case the reviewers think that it's worth reading. And the reviews have persuaded me in the correctness of my decision. and perhaps the listeners to this podcast will know then that my decisions are based on all sorts of extraneous factors, but I don't think I'll change this one. And I'll tell you why. In the few bits that I've read, it's not really about a journey from a kind of broadly based Christian belief through atheism and then to belief in a highly structured centralist church like the Roman Catholic Church. It's not about that at all. It's really, as I've read it, a set of self-justifications dressed up in a kind of apologia for what he really wants, which is to marry Usha, his wife. But I think the other side of it is that this book has got all the tepid characteristics of a bid to run for the presidency.
Yeah.
It's got a bit of something for everybody and little of anything meaningful for anybody. And if I were reviewing that book, that's precisely what I'd say about it. It's one of those things that St. Paul, if I might quote somebody who did know something about religion, St. Paul said about views that lack character and lack determination, if thou art neither hot nor cold, then shall I vomit thee out of my mouth. And there's a fair bit in this book, I think, which looks decidedly vomitorious. And for that reason, it may succeed as a substantiation of claims to run as a candidate for the presidency, but a lot of people will see through it as simply being self-serving. And that's how it struck me already. But, I'd welcome any of the listeners to this podcast, Angus, to get it out and read it and demonstrate that I'm wrong. I'd be perfectly happy about that. It's simply that I haven't got the fortitude to do it.
Well, if any of our listeners do manage to make it through, let us know. That was extraordinarily graphic, Allan. Thank you. Back to Iran for a moment. Friend of the show, Matt Duss, wrote a piece for The Nation this week, arguing that this disaster in Iran is an opportunity for a reset in US foreign policy towards the Middle East. And he writes, the last decade and a half have been a series of harsh lessons for the United States, which has neither the capacity nor the right to transform the Middle East to its liking. Decades of economic strangulation, proxy conflict, and direct military interventions have not produced better Iranian government behavior. Only sustained, engaged diplomacy has done that. And he finishes, the idiotic 2026 Trump-Netanyahu war in Iran can be the moment when we finally choose to learn these lessons. Do you think they will?
No, not this presidency and not the people around this president.
No.
I think they're very much confirmed in their ways. And that's essentially because they're quick draw McGraw gunslingers. You know, they're not driven by purpose. They're not driven by goals. They're highly reactive. They're highly quixotic. And one of the ways in particular that Trump is able to dominate the space is that nobody knows what he's going to do next. And that includes him. You know, it's all knee-jerk reaction. And he is a very powerful person. He's the president of the United States, and he has the power of the United States behind him. I think we've got to bear in mind that the presidency is an untrammeled one, as the Supreme Court decision at the beginning of July 2024 made pretty clear that in the exercise of his official functions, the president cannot commit a crime. And for that reason, he and his entourage can, as I say, they're quick draw McGraws. They sort of, very often they shoot even before they've got their pistol out of its holster. And so they shoot themselves in the foot.
Particularly in the case of Pete Hegseth.
Yes, indeed. But, you know, they shoot themselves in the foot. Yeah. And that, I think, is a bit characteristic of of this administration as it was of the Bush younger administration.
I'm curious about that because it's like I completely agree with you about Trump, but it's not just Trump, right? Like this sort of behavior isn't uncommon for the US foreign policy establishment to jump in, invade, blow up a few places and then claim the win. Do you think the system is capable of changing? The foreign policy establishment is capable of changing?
Look, I think America is always capable of changing. I mean, it's an infinitely flexible polity. It's a young polity. It's a highly resourced polity. And it's American people are very clever. I mean, it's no accident that they've got Harvard, Yale, MIT, Caltech, and, some of the most advanced science in the world. It's no accident at all. It's a highly endowed, gifted country. So, of course, they can change. Of course, they can do things differently. The question is, I think, more fundamentally, whether or not amongst their politicians there's anybody who wants to lead them out of the quagmire that they've created for themselves, certainly under the Trump and I'd have to say the Biden presidencies, to a much more disciplined, economically disciplined and foreign policy disciplined presidency. And if one looks back, America's had those in the past. I mean, the Eisenhower presidency was a pretty disciplined presidency. I think the presidency of Obama, there was a bit of weakness in there, particularly regarding Syria, but it was more centre ground with respect to the ordinary conduct of foreign policy. And the tools that Obama used were the standard tools of foreign policy. Foggy Bottom, the State Department, was a strong department. And in my personal experience of American diplomats, and I mean, this goes back 60 years, Angus, I regret to say, they are incredibly talented diplomats. It's a powerful diplomatic service, focused and very, very skillful. At the moment, of course, they're totally under-resourced, working for Marcus Rubio, who seems to want to do everything himself. We haven't even got an American ambassador in Canberra, and we haven't had through the whole of this presidency.
There's a new one on the way, right?
A new one on the way whom we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
And I mean, the midterms are only a couple of months away. So, it's not the normal way of doing business for the United States, and somehow they've got to get back there. And I'll just make one other observation, Angus, just in passing, and it's only an observation. Generally speaking, and certainly over the last 30 or 40 years, from Clinton forwards, the Democrats have had a preference for diplomacy over warfare. Now, it's not a watertight one because they still franchise out military action to the CIA or somebody else to sort of get in there and bang a few heads. But they do take standard diplomacy a bit more seriously than often the Republicans do. And I suspect the reason for that is that the Democrats tend to be a bit more sensitive to the broader interests of the states that make up the union than generally I think the Republicans are. Now, that's just an observation. And again, people listening to this can contest that and tell me I'm wrong, and I'm quite happy about that.
Yeah, for sure. And just to wrap up on Iran, we've talked about the lessons the United States might learn from this experience, but I want to hear from you about what you think Iran might learn from it and what the broader region might learn from it as well.
That also is an excellent question, and I think I've got two answers to it, Angus. What has Iran learnt from it? Stand up to the Americans. That's all you've got to do. Take a bit of punishment, get punched around a bit, stand up to them, because they don't sustain the use of military force because it doesn't get them anywhere.
Yeah.
What has the region learnt? You can't rely on America. I mean, they're all wondering what the hell has happened that the world's most powerful military country, the country that spends 5% of its GDP on armaments and recommends that everybody else in the world should do the same, except its enemies, can't actually make use of them. And they're all saying, well, that formula doesn't work, you can't trust them to know how to use that formula. We'd better look after our own interests and not rely on the United States. So you can see Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, Egypt, all of them making space at the moment as they step back and reappreciate and reposition the way in which they're going to conduct their own affairs. It's an inevitable result, I'm afraid, and it would take a long time for the US to win back the confidence of its former partners in the Middle East, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, you talked about shooting yourself in the foot, and there's maybe no better example than that.
Yeah.
6 years ago, I inherited a Labour Party that was politically, financially, and morally bankrupt. The hard work of change was with a singular purpose: not power for power's sake, but to change Britain for the better. The biggest uplift in defence spending since the Cold War. Small boat crossings falling, asylum hotels closing, protecting young people from social media, and 500,000 children being lifted out of poverty because of the choices that I made.
I want to turn to the United Kingdom and to Europe now. Our other AUKUS partner lost its Prime Minister again. Sir Keir Starmer stood down. So the UK is set to get its 5th Prime Minister in 4 years. That's sounding very Australian from the late 2000s, early 2010s. What went wrong for Sir Keir?
Everything. Everything. I don't think anything went right. My reading of it, Angus, is that Starmer was a creature actually of the machine men of the Labor Party.
Mm.
He was the least worst option at the time. And remember, the Labor Party in Britain has had a lot of problems with trying to balance off centrism against a more leftist bent. Mm-hmm. And so Keir Starmer looked as though he would be a very safe pair of hands. Well, he's not. And I think that's essentially because he couldn't control the centre at all.
Yeah.
And what's more, he didn't have the skills of manoeuvre and cunning to be able to outflank the machine men of the British Labor Party.
Yeah.
Now, what have the machine men done? They've got another one. And Andy Burnham, I think, more clever politically than Keir Starmer, in other words, more clever in political manoeuvre, is still a creature of the machine men. And I think we are yet to see what happens when he sort of picks up the reins of government as Prime Minister, which inevitably he will now, and tries to get on with managing the awfully conflicted and contesting forces that sit in any democracy, Britain's, the European democracies, America, or even ours. So I think it's an affair which is still underway. It's not going to end. It offers, I think, Britain some hope that they can push back on Nigel Farage, mm-hmm. And he certainly did in his own by-election. So maybe it will give some hope, and maybe the size of his win will give him authority. But it's a big maybe, because we have here in Australia a Prime Minister with a massive electoral win on the two-party preferred system, mm-hmm. and a very, very big majority, but very cautious in the way in which he uses that majority. And so also Keir Starmer was extremely cautious in the way which he used his majority, because many of the people sitting behind him in the parliament are not owned by him as the leader, they're owned by the machine.
Yeah. So do you see the challenges facing the Labor Party in the UK from reform specifically as being kind of similar to those faced by the Australian Labor Party with One Nation?
No, not really. No. I mean, I know that there are people who are saying that, we've got this huge rise in right-wing populism in Australia. Well, maybe we have. I'm yet to be convinced of that.
Yeah.
What we do have in Australia is a media which has no other stories it can tell except the most obvious ones. So it grabs hold of those and tells us the same story in every format of the media, because it's the only thing they can see. We don't have an investigative media anymore that gets in behind things and has a good look at the reality of our economy. I mean, our economy is not going badly, you know, and yet the constant story is Pauline Hanson's story that the economy is sort of wrecked, that our society is wrecked, that we need monoculturalism to go with monooculism and any other mono that we can find, mononucleosis perhaps, and decide, you know, that we can't be an inclusive multicultural society because unless the dominant white faction of Australia rules and directs everybody else, we can't hold together. The facts speak against that, but you wouldn't think so in the way in which the stories are being covered in our media. So I don't accept that. In Britain, it's different. What we saw in Britain, and it's still got the legacy of Brexit, 10 years of Brexit have just passed, and look at Britain now in the post-Brexit decade. It's a mess. It's a wreck. Its economy is not going well.
It's currently cooking. That's not good.
Yeah, well, that's right. And what's more, it's manufacturing and immigration debate at a time when immigration is exactly what Britain needs. But the immigration debate is not about skills. It's not about what it needs in its workforce. It's about race and colour and refugees. And part of our race debate in Australia is around the same features. So it takes a government and a leadership to be able to recentre those conversations. And I think we're in a better position in Australia to recentre them than Britain is at the moment. So that's why I take a somewhat, not a more relaxed approach to it, but I think a more optimistic approach to where we are in comparison with where Britain finds itself.
That's really interesting, Allan. I want to talk just quickly about the defence relationship between Australia and the UK. We've talked on the show before about the really serious issues facing the British shipbuilding industry and how unlikely it is that the AUKUS-class submarines, so they're the ships that Australia and the UK are co-designing, how unlikely it is that they'll be delivered on time, if at all. Do you expect, I mean, I think I know your answer here, but do you expect that a new UK leader and cabinet is going to change much in this respect?
Oh, no. Why should they?
Yeah.
They've got these sort of hayseeds from the south, the Antipodeans, sort of pouring money into their shipyards, creating a few jobs in the north. Where does Andy Burnham come from?
Manchester, right?
Manchester,
yeah.
Where a lot of these jobs do come from. And here we are putting a couple of bill into improving the shipyards where they cannot at the moment meet the demands either of their astute class, which they haven't completed yet. They've still got one under construction and most of the rest are in waiting for repairs, and they can't press on with their dreadnought class. So, and the point you make, anything that the AUKUS nuclear-powered submarine might come up with is decades away, even from completion of design, far less from construction. So anybody who wants to hold their breath until we see an AUKUS submarine, go for it. You'll go faster than the delivery of the AUKUS submarine will take.
Yeah. And Allan, we're running out of time, but to finish up, you're a really keen watcher of European politics, and Emma's over there right now. You've just returned from a trip to Europe. What was your sense of attitudes in Europe towards Trump and the United States, and I guess how it compares to attitudes here?
I visited France, Spain and Portugal and saw rather different things in each one and talked to rather different audiences, Angus. So I haven't really got a proper statistical base or a well worked out range of interlocutors who make for a standardised response. But
Emma's doing that right now. That's fine.
A couple of observations. First of all, I talk to a huge number of young people because my evening activities do include visits to bars.
I'm shocked, Allan. I'm shocked.
I know. And you think I might have learnt by now, Angus, but the reason I go to bars is, in fact, because as an outrageous extrovert, I love talking to people and I love listening to what they say. And European bars are good because they're not only young people, but they're all sorts of people. And so the couple that I frequented in Paris were fabulous. And what I discovered there, and it was replicated in the other French cities that I went to, particularly in Bordeaux, and then it was also replicated in Spain. I was in Bilbao when the European Rugby Union finals were being conducted between 2 French teams and 2 Irish teams. So I spoke to a huge number of young French people from Toulouse, which is a fabulous place for rugby football, as you know. And that was extremely entertaining and very enjoyable because they knew all about the Wallabies, they knew all about the Springboks and our Antipodean hatreds for South Africa and New Zealand. It was very funny. But the thing I came away with, Angus, was this. There is a deep-seated fear of Russia and a fundamental mistrust of Russia. Many of these young people and their parents, whom you also meet in bars, are talking about the need for much more investment in security to make sure that Russia can't dominate Europe. And there is a strong and palpable sense of that. I think if they were to think right into the nature of Russian power, they'd find it that they'd have to work out that Russia would find it very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they could make a bit of a mess as they have in Ukraine.
Yeah.
The second thing, though, and this was for me rather more shocking, Angus, is that matching the fear and loathing of Russia is a sense of pity for the United States. That they feel sorry for America. They feel sorry for Americans. They think America's something of a joke. And so balancing Russia is America the joke. And that, I think, is a very bad thing. And it's quite new to find that in Europe.
Yeah.
America's long been a respected, if somewhat, shall we say, a country about which they entertain a few doubts. But nonetheless, administration after administration right across the NATO members have always seen the United States as offering leadership. It's very clear now, whether it's the Spanish Prime Minister, the Italian Prime Minister, the French President Macron, none of them see America as being the natural leader of Europe anymore. And many of them are thinking about what they're going to have to do amongst themselves, both to keep America in it, because they do want America as part of NATO, but not to have that dependency on an America which is willful and opportunistic, which doesn't have long-term strategies and is, shall we say, quixotic in its actions. So I came back from Europe thinking, gosh, it's very different from what it was the last time I was there.
Yeah. Well, Allan, I think that's probably all we've got time for today. Thanks very much for joining me on After America with Emma Away.
Thank you very much, Angus.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back with another episode next week. If you'd like to get in contact about the show today, you can reach us at podcasts@australiainstitute.org.au. This episode was recorded on Friday, the 26th of June, and After America is supported by the Andrew Farron Foundation. I'm Angus Blackman. Thanks for listening.